When everything you've worked for is stolen overnight, and the people you trusted turn against you, how far would you go to reclaim your life and uncover a conspiracy that could bring down the powerful? This is the story of betrayal, courage, and justice. It started with a chair, an empty one. At the Christmas table, nestled between the silverware and the cranberry sauce, where my name card used to be. Where I'd sat for years, dutiful daughter, steady sister, keeper of calm. This year, there was no card, no seat, just silence. No one said anything. Not Julian, not my mother, not even my father, who always used to greet me with a stiff pat on the back like it might pass for affection. They just kept eating, laughing, pouring wine. The space I once filled was replaced with air, as if I had evaporated, polite and convenient. I watched from the hallway for exactly 13 seconds. I'd told myself I was dropping off a gift. A simple act, no expectations. Just Marina's scarf, hand-knitted, soft wool, navy blue. I left it on the console table by the door, next to the poinsettias and perfectly posed family photos. Photos I hadn't been in since 2018. No one noticed me. Or maybe they did and pretended not to. Which, honestly, hurt more. I stood in that silence, wrapped in the cold I had carried in from outside, and felt something crack. Not loud, not explosive, just quiet. Final, like the pop of thin ice underfoot. A warning. When I finally turned away, it wasn't in anger. It was in something heavier, like grief, but older. Familiar. Like I had been mourning something long, before I ever named it. I walked to my car. Snow was beginning to fall, soft and slow, the kind that makes everything look clean even when it's not. I sat behind the wheel and stared at the windshield, watching the flakes melt on impact, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel the urge to fix anything. No apology text, no over-explaining, no calling Julian to ask why, because I already knew. They had chosen their story and I didn't fit it. Not anymore. At home, I made tea I didn't drink. Scrolled through photos of the hospital staff holiday party instead. My name was tagged in a handful of blurry shots, my smile tight, shoulders slightly hunched. The way I'd learned to make myself smaller, even among people who liked me. But the messages from Marina kept me anchored. She'd been my patient once, briefly. A minor surgery, a shared joke over bad hospital pudding, a connection that grew in the quiet spaces between discharge papers and follow-ups. Now, years later, she'd become something else. A friend. A reminder. Her last message that night just said, "I saw your name missing on their post. I hope you know it's not you." It's them. I reread it 4 times. Then I turned off my phone, and I let the silence be loud. The next morning, Aunt Ramona called. Ramona, who always smelled like lavender and smoked clove cigarettes in secret. Who'd once told me, at 13, that family is what you choose to carry, not what clings to your ankles. She didn't ask why I hadn't stayed for dinner. She didn't need to. She posted something, she said softly. Marina. I didn't check immediately. I didn't have to, because somewhere in the quiet wreckage of that empty chair, someone had noticed. Not out of obligation, not from guilt, but because they saw me. And that was enough to begin the undoing. Not mine. Theirs. It had been 3 days since Christmas, and the echo of that empty chair still followed me like a shadow, quiet but insistent. I hadn't left the apartment. Not really. I'd gone as far as the lobby to collect a package, a book I didn't remember ordering. I set it on the kitchen counter, still in its wrapping, next to the unopened wine bottle that Julian had gifted me last year. The label was peeling now, as if even it had grown tired of waiting to be seen. I moved through my home like a visitor, touching surfaces, rearranging throw pillows, and standing in doorways with no purpose. The air felt heavier somehow. Still, that morning, as snow dusted the window panes, I opened my laptop, intending to check patient notes from work. Distraction had always been my strongest coping mechanism. But instead, muscle memory dragged my fingers to social media. I wish it hadn't. Because there it was. A photo. A perfectly staged group shot. My family. All of them. Standing around the sao. Dinner table, lit candles, coordinated sweaters, artificial cheer. Even Julian, with his arm around Marina, smiling like he belonged. And just beneath that post, in the caption, my sister had written, "Family means everything. Blessed beyond words." It hit harder than expected, like a slap with a velvet glove, dismissive, elegant, deliberate. I stared at that image, zoomed in, counted faces. Mine wasn't among them. And yet, my absence was louder than any smile in the frame. My erasure surgical? That's when I saw the comment, not from a stranger, but from Marina. So grateful to be surrounded by real love this year. Thank you for letting me in where others walked out. Real love? I felt my throat tighten. Heat rising behind my eyes. My hands trembled, not from rage, but from the bitter realization that she wasn't just there now. She was entrenched, inserted seamlessly into spaces I'd once fought to hold. But what stunned me more? The 32 likes on her comment, including Julian. He had liked it, confirmed it, validated the replacement of me with her, like it was some kind of upgrade. I closed the laptop, but it was too late. The poison was already in my bloodstream. Later that evening, I went for a walk. The streets were quiet, lit by amber streetlights and the occasional flicker of a passing car. I walked without a destination, just motion to outrun the ache. At a corner cafe, I paused. Through the frosted window, I saw people gathered, laughing over steaming mugs. A woman reached across the table to fix her friend's scarf. That small gesture, so soft, so full of quiet affection, made something in me rupture. I had spent years fixing things, scarves, schedules, people. But who had ever fixed me? Who had ever said, "Lena, you look tired. Let me help." Or, "Lena, you've given enough. Let yourself rest." Or simply, "Stay. You're wanted." No one. Not Julian, not my family, and certainly not Marina, who now wore the life I'd once stitched together with bare hands. I turned around, heart pounding, a new kind of cold seeping into my bones. Not winter, not frostbite. It was clarity. When I returned home, I opened the book I had forgotten I ordered. A gift from myself. Inside the cover, a quote was printed in delicate serif font. "Sometimes the people who erase you are the ones who fear your memory the most." It felt like a message from the universe. Or maybe from the version of me that had started to fight back. I lit a candle. I poured a glass of that wine. And I wrote a letter, not to them, but to myself. A promise. You are not invisible. You are not replaceable. You are not broken. They may have written you out, but your story is far from over. That night, I dreamt of the empty chair. Only this time, it wasn't empty. It was on fire, and I watched it burn with something like peace in my chest. Because finally, I wasn't trying to save a place that was never meant for me. A week had passed since that cursed Christmas dinner, since Marina's smug little comment. Since Julian's betrayal became more than emotional, it became public, documented, liked, shared. But grief was a funny thing. It wasn't linear. It didn't ask permission. It bled into the cracks of your routines, curled itself around your coffee mugs and keychains, turned old photographs into landmines and scented candles into weapons. I had expected rage, but what I found instead was focus. Cold, clear, surgical. It started with a call from Evelyn, the admin at my clinic. She was breathless and apologetic. "Dr. Lena, I didn't want to disturb you over the holidays, but something strange happened. A reporter called, said they were doing a human interest piece on workplace harassment in the medical field and claimed they had your name from a source." My heart dropped. "Did you give them anything?" I asked. "Of course not." "But Lena," they knew things, specific things. They mentioned your disciplinary hearing last year, the one that was sealed. I froze. Only 3 people had access to that file. my supervisor, my legal counsel, and Julian when he helped me write the appeal. I hung up the call, hands shaking. This wasn't just betrayal. This was sabotage. Julian wasn't content with replacing me in his personal life. No, he wanted me discredited, diminished, erased professionally, too. It was almost poetic. He'd weaponized my trust, my vulnerability, my honesty. But here's the thing about betrayal. It clarifies, and clarity is dangerous in the hands of someone silent for too long. That night, I opened an old locked drive, one I hadn't touched in over a year. Inside it were files, documents, emails, and recordings. Things I had saved not because I planned to use them, but because some part of me, deep down, had always known that Julian's loyalty was conditional. There it was. An old email. Subject: reimbursement request. A string of attachments. Receipts. That didn't match. Hospital invoices filed for services never rendered. Julian had submitted them to our clinic's shared insurance pool during the pandemic, claiming them as mental health sessions. Only, those therapists? They didn't exist. It was a small fraud, but fraud nonetheless. Back then, I had confronted him gently. He had spun it, called it temporary desperation and just trying to survive. And like a fool, I had let it go. But now it looked like a motive. Now it looked like a pattern. I sat there, the silence humming around me like static, as I pieced together what I knew. Julian had replaced me. He had lied to me. He was trying to ruin me, and worse, he'd chosen Marina, someone who had once borrowed money from me to pay off credit card debt, as his new partner, confidant, and apparently co-conspirator. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. One folder, one anonymous Dropbox, one trusted journalist friend from college. Owed me a favor. I didn't send it yet, not tonight, but I could, and that knowing was power. The next morning, I dressed deliberately. Not in my usual grays and navy workwear. I wore a crimson blouse and sharp heels that echoed with every step in the clinic hallway. I walked past the nurse's station, past the admin desk, into Julian's office. He looked up, startled. Guilty. Lena, he started, fake warmth bleeding into his voice. I closed the door behind me. Don't, I said coldly. We're not doing that. He straightened, eyes narrowing. Doing what? Pretending. I smiled, not with warmth, but with knowledge. I know what you did. A flicker of panic. You leaked sealed information. You planted a narrative, and you thought I wouldn't find out. His face paled. Lena, this isn't... I leaned in. You think I'm broken, replaceable, disposable. You think Marina makes you safer, smaller, and easier to impress. And maybe she does. He blinked. But make no mistake, I'm not done. You tried to erase me. You made that very clear. I stepped back. Calm, precise. But here's what's going to happen next. You're going to stay away from me, professionally and personally. You're going to decline that interview request. And if one more word about me leaks to the press, HR, or your new circle of blessed friends, you will regret it. Because I still have the receipts. He swallowed. I turned toward the door, paused, then looked back. And Julian? His eyes met mine, barely. You didn't replace me. You downgraded. Outside his office, the clinic hummed with life. I walked, through it not as a victim, not as a ghost, but as a woman resurrected by her own fire. And for the first time in weeks, I felt it. Not vengeance, not peace, but power, the kind they never saw coming. The morning light was soft, but the tension was sharp as glass. I sat in my small apartment, laptop open, fingers poised above the keyboard. The email was ready to send, the anonymous folder of proof, neatly packaged with a detailed timeline and evidence of Julian's financial fraud and professional sabotage. But this wasn't about revenge. It was about justice, about reclaiming my name and my dignity. I took a deep breath and hit send. Within hours, the first ripple appeared. A message from an investigative journalist named Claire, someone who'd covered medical corruption scandals before, received everything. This is big. I'll dig in and get back to you. Stay tuned. The wait began. Meanwhile, Julian's world started to crumble. He tried to maintain his usual charm at the clinic, but the whispers started. The uneasy looks, the invitations to private meetings with HR, the pointed questions about financial discrepancies. He was sweating. I could see it in his eyes when our paths crossed, but I wasn't finished. I reached out to the clinic's board anonymously, providing detailed reports of Julian's questionable reimbursements and misconduct. It was slow but steady. The board initiated a formal investigation. Marina, oblivious or complicit, kept flaunting her new relationship with Julian, unaware that the foundation beneath them was cracking. One afternoon, I ran into her at the hospital cafeteria. She smiled that smug smile and said, "You're fighting a lost cause, Lena." I smiled back. "Maybe," I said, "but I'm a fighter." Her smile faltered. As days turned into weeks, the story broke. A respected news outlet published a detailed exposé on Julian's fraud and abuse of power. The clinic's reputation trembled. Julian was suspended pending investigation. I watched the news, a strange mix of relief and emptiness washing over me. I hadn't won yet. The hardest part was still ahead, rebuilding my career, healing the wounds, but I had taken back my narrative. That night, I sat by the window, the city lights flickering. A message popped up on my phone. From Claire. "This is just the beginning. Let me know when you're ready for the next step." I smiled. For the first time in a long time, I felt hope. The days after the exposé were a blur of interviews, messages, and cautious hope. Suddenly, the Lena everyone knew was no longer the disgraced employee. She was the whistleblower who exposed corruption, but the victory felt fragile. Despite the truth, I knew the clinic's board was still wary of me. I had burned bridges. To truly move forward, I had to start fresh. Claire, the journalist, became a lifeline. She connected me with a nonprofit organization that supported professionals fighting workplace injustice. Their legal team offered to review my case and help me negotiate severance and references. I began attending support groups and networking events where people shared stories of betrayal and resilience. I met people who believed in second chances, who understood that truth was messy but powerful. One evening, as I walked home from a networking event, my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. "I want to help you. Meet me tomorrow at 10 a.m. Cafe Verona. Come alone." My heart raced. Was it a trap or an ally? Curiosity won. The next morning, I sat at a corner table scanning the entrance. A man in his mid-40s, dressed in a tailored suit, approached. He introduced himself as Michael, a former hospital administrator turned consultant specializing in healthcare, ethics, and compliance. Michael explained he had been investigating Julian for months on a separate case. He believed the corruption went deeper than I realized. Together, we could bring down the entire network. I hesitated but felt a surge of determination. This was bigger than me now. As I left the cafe, I glanced back. For the first time, I wasn't alone. Michael and I wasted no time. We met daily, pooling what evidence I had with his insider knowledge and contacts. Each lead we chased revealed another layer of deception: fake contracts, ghost employees, kickbacks disguised as consulting fees. One night, as we prepared to confront a key witness, my phone buzzed with an anonymous threat. "Stop digging or this won't end well for you." Fear tightened around me, but Michael was calm. "We knew this would get dangerous," he said. "But we have enough to expose them. We just need one final piece." That piece came unexpectedly. Claire, the journalist, uncovered financial records linking Julian and several high-ranking officials to offshore accounts funneling illicit money. With that proof, we went to the authorities. The investigation was launched immediately. Julian was arrested along with several co-conspirators. The clinic board held an emergency meeting, Public pressure forced them to publicly clear my name and reinstate me with full back pay. But I knew this was not just about me. It was about changing a broken system, Michael, and I started working on creating stronger oversight and whistleblower protections within healthcare institutions. I was invited to speak at conferences, becoming an advocate for ethical practices. Though scars remained, I felt renewed. The betrayal that once shattered me had become the spark that ignited change. As I looked out at the city skyline from my new office, I smiled quietly. This was only the beginning.